Hey everyone, it's Brian, and welcome back to the More For Me and You podcast. Before we get going, make sure you go hit that subscribe button and share this episode with a friend. We'd love to get to know them, whoever they are. But as for today's episode, we welcome in independent filmmaker and co-founder of Slamdance, Dan Mirvish. And we get a chance to talk about his journey as an independent filmmaker, his experiences in helping create Slamdance, and we also get a chance to talk about his book about independent filmmaking. And then later in the episode, we discuss a film that he actually made called 18 and a Half. And you can find it playing for free right now on the free streaming service Momi2. So listen to this episode, and then afterwards, go buy his book. And if you have time, download Momi2 and watch 18 and a Half. But as for now, we will see you in the pod.
Yeah, that's right. You're tuning in to the More For Me and You podcast. That's real interviews, real movie reviews, real people, real journeys. If you real, lock in. I've been working all night, early in the morning. If you hustle high, hustle, you can never waste a moment. That's more for me and you. 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 Let's go.
We have a movie on Momi2 from you, 18 and a Half. We absolutely love it. Our fans love it.
Thanks.
And so we had to have you on to talk to you about your film, which we'll do in the second half of this episode. But what I really would love to do, because most people only hear kind of the end result of someone's career or the pinnacle of their time. I want to go back to your early days.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, like, where are you from? Who are you? You know, tell us a little bit about Dan Mirvish.
Well, like most people, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay. Yeah, everyone's from Omaha.
Yeah, everyone.
How'd you know?
Yeah, exactly. Grew up there. There wasn't much sort of a film scene there at all.
It was a football scene.
It was
like,
a lot of football.
yeah. Football and farming.
Yeah, that's about it. But Omaha itself is pretty cosmopolitan, more so than most people would think. And so there was some art house films that that my friends and I would go to, but it was kind of the height of the video store era too. So, watching Evil Dead on VHS at, my friend's house, things like that, and Buckaroo Banzai, Repo Man. And then went to college in Washington University in St. Louis. Wound up majoring in history and poli-sci, but they had literally one or two film classes there. Took a really great Super 8 class, which I really loved, and then that got me a little bit more interested in film. And then I did some summer classes while I was still an undergrad at UCLA, and in 16 millimeter cinematography.
Yeah.
And
for those that don't know what Super 8 is, can you?
Yeah,
can you
Super 8 is. Now everyone's talking about 70 millimeter and IMAX. Well, half of that is 35 millimeter, which is what most of the industry shot on for 80 years or 90 years. Half of that is 16 millimeter, which was also big between like the 1960s and still used today. And then half of that was Super 8, 8 millimeter, which then turned into Super 8, which was kind of the more consumer version before people had camcorders and then phones. This is what your grandparents probably shot home movies on in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So
which by the way, I love that recently. I love that you bring up like going back in history of the film and also like current IMAX, like top level. Ryan Coogler just obviously had a video out about him sharing about with Sinners and sharing about the different types of film that they shot on and showing people like coming in, it's actually showing them the strips. Like, I think that's so cool because most people just think that film is digital now.
Yeah, and it's really, and I've got a whole chapter in my book about how it's had this zombie resurgence in the last few years, thanks to some specific filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, Tarantino, and Paul Thomas Anderson, who kind of said, no, Kodak, we realize you're going bankrupt, but please don't, and they brought almost single-handedly brought back film, or at least prevented it from completely dying. There were almost no labs left. But there still were, and they've come back. There's now a few new labs, and there's newer cameras because there's a whole generation of filmmakers who did grow up on digital, who are like, well, I want to do this. This is cool. This
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
vintage. You know,
This is vintage. It's retro. It's
it's like the new vinyl.
and there's so much more character you can bring out in using real film too.
Yeah, and what I've found, because my last film before 18 and a half was called Bernard and Huey, and about 10% of that we shot on real film on Super 16. And what's interesting about it that I'd kind of forgotten, because my very first film was shot on 35 mil, is there's a pace and a quality to the set life, to the actors. They pay, because with film you can literally hear money going through the camera, because it costs every foot you shoot, you have to pay to develop. And so there's a much more reverence and respect for the take, as opposed to digital. Oh yeah, let's improvise. Let's move the boom mic over here. No, it's in the shot. That's all right. We'll zoom out of it, or whatever.
Because then editing back then, it was so hard, like splicing it and
exactly
matching
so
it. And it's like no,
it's and so actors and the crew really, focus a lot more on the take, on the specific take, which is why, for people like Ryan Coogler, it's great, because you can really focus on the shot and the performance and the lighting for one shot at a time, as opposed to just light everything, get a bunch of cameras,
Yeah, my father was a filmmaker, and so I remember in my childhood, in his office, having like stacks of cans of the film tins, and then it would just stack all the way to the ceiling.
Yeah, that's my living room.
Yeah,
Still.
I love that.
Yeah. So anyway, I took a class at UCLA, which I really love, from a great cinematographer. And UCLA is great. It smells like a real film school, eucalyptus and opportunity. It's great that way. And then went back to school, but was very interested in politics and journalism. So when I graduated, worked in D.C. For a couple of years, mainly as a Senate speechwriter. But even doing that, like I'd spend like one day a week in the video recording studios in the basement of the Capitol, filming speeches from the senator I was working for, Tom Harkin from Iowa. So that kind of kept my interest in film going, and then I applied to film grad school, and got rejected from most of them, but the one I got into was USC, which is all right.
It's okay. I mean,
yeah, it'll do.
A few people have come through.
Yeah, and so came back out to LA, and been in LA more or less since then. So I got my master's degree there. The summer after my first year, I had a great experience working on a kickboxing movie in the Philippines. There's an old adage, you learn more from working on a bad movie than you do from working on a good movie. And I learned a lot on American Kickboxer 2, as it came to be known. But it was fun, But I loved all those movies. I know, and I really saw a movie get made from beginning to end. That was really kind of the unique experience, which is hard for like interns to have that experience. And then so for my senior thesis, I said, why don't I figure out a way to do a feature? And I was the first student at USC to ever do a feature as their thesis. But this was, the early 90s. Richard Linklater, Robert Rodriguez were shooting these, indie films in Austin. And I'm like, well, why don't I go back to Nebraska, to Omaha? And so I wrote a script that came to be known as Omaha the Movie. And I went back there, raised money from, friends, family, rich people, not so rich people. One of our biggest investors turned out to be Chuck Hagel, who was 2-term senator and secretary of defense. But when I met him, he was just Chuck, the venture capital guy, who just gave me a few bucks. So it was people like that. But I knew a lot of actors in Omaha. It was always a strong theater town. It's where Henry Fonda's from originally. And we just got everybody involved, and I needed a local producer there, and so teamed up with a guy named Dana Altman, who coincidentally was Robert Altman's grandson. So Robert Altman, who was like the king of indie filmmakers, certainly at that time, kind of became our mentor on the project. And Panavision gave us 35 millimeter cameras, and we wound up editing back in LA, right around the corner, literally from here at Paramount Studios.
Yeah.
So Paramount gave us a free edit suite. So I was cutting on upright moviolas, and
so cool,
having lunch in the commissary with Klingons, and it was, going to Astro Burger down the street.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. But then, at the time, what do you do with an indie film? You try to get into Sundance, and that was really this was the high point of Sundance. But by now the mid '90s, it was kind of a pivotal time in independent filmmaking. It was right around the height of when Hollywood was discovering indie film. So all the studios were kind of absorbing or starting their own indie film companies. So Miramax had just become part of Disney. Fine Line had just become part of Warner Brothers. Fox was getting ready to launch Fox Searchlight. And Sundance was kind of they're going to Hollywood. This is when they were inviting Harvey in to do horrible things in Park City. And so whereas they had really focused on first-time indie filmmakers, they were kind of starting to showcase more, second-time filmmakers and films with bigger budgets and films with stars and films that already had distribution. And they kind of left behind the niche of the first-time indie filmmakers. Yeah. Also, there were a lot more of us then. At the 90s, everyone was like, "Ooh, I want to do this," So along with a couple other filmmakers. So I didn't get into Sundance,
Yeah.
But really, if you didn't get in, you were dead in the water because there were not as many other film festivals. All the other regional and international festivals would just use Sundance as kind of the shorthand, like, oh, let's use that program. There's the 12 films we'll show every year. And so... and there had been a couple individual filmmakers a year before who also didn't get into Sundance, but they showed up in Park City, including Trey Parker and Matt Stone, South Park guys. They had their first film was called Cannibal the Musical, which is a great film. Didn't get into Sundance, and they had done their own little Renegade screening in Park City, and we'd heard about these guys. And so the next year we thought, why don't we do that idea, but then team up with a dozen feature directors and a dozen short filmmakers and just put on a show. We literally all just, showed up one way or another in Park City and found venues. One of our venues was literally 30 feet down the hall from Sundance's main venue, like
wow.
in a hotel there. So, and they weren't happy with us, but everyone else was. So because it really, the press was really turning on Sundance. Because everyone was recognizing that Sundance was kind of getting too Hollywood, and they recognized us as like, oh, these are these punk indie film kids. This is what Sundance used to be like.
Yep.
And so we got some great press, and then after doing it that first year for our own films, we thought, well, I think there's something there. We're filling a niche or serving a niche that isn't being served otherwise. So why don't we do it again? And so we did for 30 more years.
That's so cool.
And our focus has always been on first-time directors without distribution deals in place and low budget, whatever that has meant over the years. And because of that, we've shown the first films of people like Christopher Nolan, Rian Johnson. Ryan had actually been a PA on my film, Omaha the Movie. The Russo brothers, the late Lynn Shelton, Gina Prince Bythewood, Sean Baker, who just won 4 Oscars, Bong Joon-ho, another big Oscar winner from a couple years ago. The Safdie brothers, all kinds of Lena Dunham, all kinds of great people have, we showcased their first films one way or another.
Do you feel like those filmmakers may or may not have been ever seen or discovered without being like going through Slamdance?
Why, yes, of course. No, I mean, a lot of these people were already, Nolan was already starting to work on Memento at the time, and so a lot of them, they would have done fine without us, but we would like to take full credit for them.
Of course. But it is crazy to think that they would have been turned down by Sundance.
Yeah, but some, like the Russo brothers, I mean, they were just a couple knuckleheads from Cleveland, who had made this little 60 millimeter film called Pieces, and we had arranged for Steven Soderbergh, who was a big, backer of ours, to see their screening in Park City, and he was like, "Oh, I think I see something in these guys. Guys, move to Hollywood. I'll give you an office. Actually, not even an office, a phone." In his lobby that he had with George Clooney at the time, and that launched the Russo brothers,
Crazy.
That's definitely one story that literally would have only come out of Slamdance, and Anthony Russo met his wife at Slamdance. I mean, there's a lot of these connections here. They were programmers when Nolan's film was picked. Nolan's wife and producing partner, Emma Thomas, she was then a programmer for Slamdance for 2 more years. So it's a lot more than just them showing their films at the festival. A lot of them stayed involved and still are involved. The Russo brothers, give a $25,000 prize to a filmmaker every year at Slamdance.
Wow.
So, and it's become this kind of nice sort of secret community that we kind of all have in Hollywood. It's like, I mean, I call it Generation Slamdance because it really is now a generation of filmmakers who all kind of know each other through this one little festival that, Hollywood barely pays any attention to.
Yeah. This is great. Normally I have to interject and add commentary to these. I just want to sit back and listen to you. This is incredible to hear your story and hear how you built help build Slamdance. I was saying it's not just you.
No, and I really, made a concerted effort after about, for the first 7 years, I was, very involved with it.
Yeah.
And then really kind of made a decisive decision to kind of take a step back and focus on my own filmmaking.
Yeah.
Because also by then, and this was in large part by design, we created a programming scheme that involves alumni, which most festivals don't do. And so that then allows us to say, well, okay, now we've got all these hundreds of other filmmakers involved. I don't need to be the one picking films anymore. I'll let the Russo brothers pick the films this year, or whoever it is.
See, we've been able to do that with our festival, the Momi 2 College Film Festival, and which you've agreed to come and help speak with some of the students during our virtual panels. So thank you for doing that.
No, looking forward to it.
But we actually have some of the previous, it's only our 3rd year, but like some of the previous student filmmakers come back and help us judge the selections and even be part of the day. Like we have last year, one of the filmmakers actually came back and hosted the red carpet. This year, she's actually going to come back and AD our festival.
Great.
And so really getting people involved, and that's great that you guys still do that.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of what makes Slamdance feel have a vibe that's definitely different than Sundance and a lot of other festivals.
Absolutely. And you guys recently moved it to
We did to
Los
LA.
Angeles.
So we were in Park City, literally across the street for most of our time from Sundance, and then the writing was already on the wall that Sundance was going to move, which they finally announced this year. They're going to move to Boulder, which I think is probably a good idea for them, and it'll be nice for Boulder. But we kind of saw that coming, and so last year we decided to move to LA. And, our offices are in LA. A lot of us live here. We had been doing events in LA for 30 years. So for us, it really wasn't that strange. But it's a lot easier and cheaper. Part of the problem with both us and Sundance was that Park City was getting so expensive because it's a ski town and you're doing a film festival in the middle of ski season. So condo prices, food, everything was really expensive for filmmakers, for press, for film lovers, to go to. So that drove a lot of why both us and Sundance finally left. Anyway, so we were in LA, not that far from here, last year. This past year, we were in West Hollywood, and I think we're doing it again in more or less the same place next year, but we'll see. We kind of take it year to year, and we'll see. Maybe we'll go to Boulder. I don't know.
Yeah, I really kicking myself because I did not pay attention to the fact that you had moved to LA. I would have been there in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
because getting out of town sometimes is difficult. And
exactly.
I have a 3-year-old, so it's like even more difficult to leave town.
No, exactly.
So I really wish, because I would have been there in a heartbeat. So hopefully I'll get to go next year and
bring
see what you guys do.
the 4-year-old then.
I know, right?
Yeah, they get older.
Crazy. Yeah, they do every year. I hear that's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah.
So would you say that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would you say that Slamdance is one of your proudest accomplishments within the industry, or what would you say it is?
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely proud that we started it and it's still going and has, really kept to its mission very much, thanks to a lot of the devoted people still running it, who aren't me. So, I'll give it a nudge when I can, but otherwise I don't have to do much. But at the end of the day, I still think of myself as a film director first, and foremost. And I've made about a half dozen features and still have 1 or 2 left in me, I think, But it's, but I sort of think of these things a bit more holistically. Like a feature film, for example, yeah, it's 90 minutes of entertainment, but it represents 5 years of pre-production, 300 crowdfunding backers, 50 people who worked on the film, cast, crew, everyone else, and all the audiences that see it at film festivals and in theaters and on Momitu.
Yeah.
And so it winds up being, each project winds up being sort of its own community-based performance art project, that can last 25 years.
Yeah.
And in that sense, Slamdance is that too. It's a 30-year community-based performance arts project.
For sure.
Project. And I think that's kind of how you have to think about these things. If you just think of them as, it's just disposable entertainment, then it's really hard to sleep at night.
I really would love for just the world to not think of cinema as disposable entertainment.
Yeah.
It's sadly gotten to that point, and I hope that changes now with kind of I don't know, how the film world is altering at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to get too deep into that. But I would love to get back to the appreciation for independent film and what it takes to get in there, and even not reviewing films the same way that you see.
Right.
Don't review a $300 million film or $300 million film the same way you review a $300,000 film.
Exactly. Yeah.
You need to understand the depth behind it.
Yeah.
And not that you have to be a cinephile. I don't even consider myself a cinephile. Like, I'm not.
Right.
But I still appreciate all the hard work that goes into making a film.
Yeah. No, there's a reason these credits wind up being 7 minutes long. There's a lot of people to thank, because a lot of people, put their heart and soul into every film, no matter whether the film is good, bad, or otherwise. It could be a kickboxing movie or an IMAX movie.
It's interesting. When I was growing up, whenever we went to the theater, I was never able to leave when I wanted to leave, especially when I went with my father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he always wanted to stay and watch the credits.
Yeah.
And I never understood that until later in life. And I'm like, because he appreciates all of the people that did the work.
Yeah. And honestly, I got to give hats off to Marvel for instilling that back into a new generation, by having the post-credit sequences that forces people to watch the credits, which is really nice.
And if you're not doing that with showing behind the scenes footage or whatever you're doing, you need to do that on your film, because it definitely keeps people engaged.
Yeah.
And potentially, if you're on an ad-based platform like Momitu, it'll get them to watch one more ad, because they'll watch the whole credits and then the ad will play. So, hey, a little bit more money for the filmmaker too.
Right.
Yeah. So taking yourself outside of the film world, I know it's hard to, because as a filmmaker, you're immersed in it. You have to be.
Yeah.
What's your favorite non-film world, non-business world thing to do? Like, what is on your personal side?
I've got several children, and so they've kept me busy, and a wonderful wife, and a house, and garden.
Yeah.
Normal things. I'll do woodworking sometimes.
That's cool. What kind of woodworking do you do? Like, what is it?
Just with whatever's lying around. Usually. Nothing too fancy, because we just remodeled our garage into a little mini house. The nice part was we had all this extra wood lying around from construction. The bad part was I didn't have a garage to work in anymore. So, so my wife is like, "Why is there all the sawdust in the kitchen?" So, but I made some cutting boards out of
That's cool.
cherry molding that was left over. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, this was expensive.
There's a business down in Orange County that does that. All they do is just make cutting boards out of random wood that they find like on the beach or in whatever place they go to, like hiking or whatever.
Yeah.
They just get wood and they make it into just little cutting boards, like as small as like this, all the way to some big, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And the finishes on them and everything is really incredible.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have friends that are really into it, and you can do some amazing stuff. Mine is, I literally just sand off the edges of a piece of wood, and I'm like, there's a cut, charcuterie, anyone?
Charcuterie? Let's go. I could go for some charcuterie right now.
Yeah,
I love a good
or some
charcuterie
popcorn,
board.
Some fine Momito branded popcorn.
Isn't it incredible? It's just Costco popcorn, but we'll say it's Momito branded. Why not?
Yeah, there you go.
But it is good. Yeah, enjoy. So moving forward, you actually wrote a book
Couple, yeah.
on
Yeah.
filmmaking, specifically on
filmmaking.
filmmaking.
Oh, yeah,
but-
that one.
Yeah. So let me go specifically to filmmaking. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your book,
Sure.
and obviously I'd love for I'll give you time at the end to let people know where they can find it as well. But
Yeah, it's called The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking.
okay,
And I've done 2 editions of it.
yeah,
And then the second edition, I also did an audiobook with me narrating, like all books, it's me in my closet, surrounded by dirty underwear and socks, you get the best audio quality that way.
it has to be dirty too.
Absolutely. Yeah. The rest doesn't work.
The dirtier, the better. The more creativity
it
juices
absorbs more of the sound reflection. So the book was published by Focal Press and Routledge, which is a bit of an academic publisher. So it's actually been used in a lot of film schools around the world, including in my classes, because I also have started teaching a little bit at Chapman University in Orange County.
Yeah, incredible school.
And I've guest lectured at about 70 film schools around the world. But the book is really designed for filmmakers or any kind of content creator, I suppose, who kind of know the basics already. Like, it's not filmmaking 101. It's like 102. It's like, okay, but you've made a bunch of shorts, and how do you make a feature? Or you've made one feature that you just showed to friends. How do you make another feature that's kind of festival level? And how do you get, big Hollywood actors on a micro budget, scale? And it really goes through everything from screenwriting, finance, and casting, directing on set, and producing on set. A lot of it is really more producing as much as it is directing, post-production, the film festival world, distribution, whether to go to film school, it's how to have a career, a sustainable career as a filmmaker, which I'm still trying to figure out. So it's really kind of soup to nuts, nuts to bolts, all of it, with a lot of detail, but also with a lot of humor, hopefully, people have said, and kind of inspirational but realistic. Like, I drop a lot of truth bombs, like, yeah, you're not going to make money, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And here's all these other reasons why you should do it, and a lot of like loopholes and workarounds. And that's why I say, like, it kind of builds on what you may have already learned in film school or what you learned on YouTube film school. And kind of takes it
or no film school.
Or no film school. Right. Yeah. And then kind of offers the sort of the practical steps on how to turn that into a feature.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I've probably spent way too much time on is Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of people, especially because we have an account on Reddit specifically for the film festival.
Oh, great.
And so I just use that as a tool to like talk about with other film festivals and get gauges on like what they're doing, what's working, what's not working. But also it kind of helps us share the festival as well. And there's so many, I would say, younger individuals that will ask, hey, I love film. I want to get into filmmaking. Should I go to film school? And so that question consistently comes up because it's like, is school worth it? It's expensive, but like, what am I going to learn? And what school's the best school to go to? Or like, I can only afford this much. Where school should I go to, or should I not go? Should I go to YouTube school and all that stuff? I mean, very condensed answer. What would you say to someone that is interested in becoming a filmmaker? Go to film school, not go to film school, or what's the key point to figure out what choice is best for them?
I think if you're a high school student and you're thinking about film school for college, I would say go to a film school, go to college or university that has a film program, but also has a bunch of other things.
Yes.
Because you may change your mind in 2 years, number one. But also, even if you go to Chapman or USC in film, they're part of bigger universities, you're going to meet other people who are going to become doctors and lawyers and investment bankers and accountants. Those are going to be your backers for when you get out of film school, number one. Number two, you may marry one, which I strongly recommend. I always say marry well. That's like the only 2 words any filmmaker should know. But number three, like then it gives you a chance to take history classes, philosophy classes, English classes. Like you know, what you don't want to be is just so enmeshed in film that you don't know what to make films about. And I've seen that as a problem sometimes for filmmakers when they haven't taken any other classes and anything else, and you're like, okay, what do I make a film about? You know, so I think that's the probably the single best idea is just find a college or a university that has a film program but also has other stuff. Yeah. Because then there's all of a sudden there's a wide range of costs involved. You know, you can go to Cal State Northridge or Cal State Long Beach, which both are top 25 film programs, but
incredible schools,
much cheaper than Columbia University or NYU or USC, you know? So there's a wide range of prices involved, you know, or Santa Monica College even. That would be the biggest advice. And then the next question is, okay, well, if you're an undergrad and were like me, like a history major, then do you go to grad school in film? And I think what's interesting that I think a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of very specific grad programs that, you know, you can just go to grad school in screenwriting. You can just go to grad school in producing, which is, I also, you know, I teach in that program at Chapman, you know, or just directing or production design or sound or editing. You don't have to do a broad-based thing. You can specialize. But the other thing you can do is if you went to film school somewhere else as an undergrad, you majored in it maybe, but maybe you didn't go to a top film school, come to LA and just take individual classes at like UCLA Extension, you know, like, oh, I'm missing that one skill set of how to edit on Avid or how to write for a TV sitcom. Fine, just take that one class. No, you know, or take a class at Santa Monica College, or if you're in New York, you know, NYU has an extension program. And I think take advantage of those programs because number one, they're a lot cheaper. Number two, nobody ever asks if you have a graduate degree in film or an undergraduate degree or even a high school diploma sometimes. So it's in that sense, the film industry is very democratic. It's different from law and medicine where you have to have a degree, you know.
I think for those people asking that question, it's almost like if you're going to get into film school is needed. If you know that you could probably learn something on your own and be kind of the go-getter that like could do a YouTube type or whatever, and you don't have the means to be able to go to school, like, and that's a really tough question. I've seen some very, very good filmmakers that didn't need to go to film school because they were able to learn on their own.
No, I mean,
but have to be able to learn. You have to be able to be that go-getter type to be like, I need to learn this, so I'm going to grind to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a whole film industry in Nigeria that's based on YouTube. You know, like, those guys didn't go to film school, but Nollywood is like bigger than Hollywood now.
And Nollywood makes more films on average per year than Hollywood does.
Yeah,
especially now.
yeah, exactly.
Especially now, but even when Hollywood was like really booming, like Nollywood was still producing a lot of films, and like they're typically unscripted, and they're just like, here's a scene, go for it and have fun. But I'm working with some kids in India, you know, same thing. They went to a university, like a really good university in like tech, but got tech degrees. There wasn't a film program they were in, and now they're like figuring this out, and they're like, woohoo, we're making movies. You know? I have also kind of come to the understanding that the undergrad side of things is more where you learn about the basics and you also build some relationships with people that you might work with down the road. And grad school is really where you hone in your craft, like what you know that you are going to want to be
right.
in,
Yeah, that's why I say like there's a lot of these very specific programs. The thing about the relationships though, I think that gets a little bit overwrought. Like some people are like, oh, I must go to USC because of the relationships.
Not the specific school, but like the people that you're surrounded by are going to be the people that become your, like if you become a director.
But
right?
I think the key thing there is that yes, you should have a cohort of collaborators and friends, whether you got that in film school or for most of us involved with Slamdance, we didn't get that at film school. We got that at Slamdance at the festival. And that's where I've met most of my collaborators in the last 30 years came out of that. You know, Christopher Nolan met Wally Pfister, who became his DP on the next 10 films. He met him at Slamdance, you know. So so you can find those communities and of cohorts in other ways besides film school.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't advise picking a film school just because of that or because of some sort of assumed reputation.
And that leads us down a whole nother rabbit hole of like film festival strategies, which I didn't want to get into today.
No,
but
that's a whole thing.
I'll very touch on that slightly. Is that
there's a chapter in my book about it. Just
there you
read
go.
that. Yeah.
Perfect. Just read the book.
Yeah.
Make it
There
easy.
you go. It's in the book.
But a touch on that. Just the fact that if you're going to enter into a film festival, a good strategy for that would make sure that you can attend it.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to meet the people.
Exactly.
You can't just get a laurel and expect that you're going to make it. Like you have to get those relationships.
Yeah. I always say, there's a lot of great reasons to go to film festivals, to find distribution, to find agents, to find, to get laurels, to get, reviews for your film, to show a film to an audience. But the number one reason to go to film festivals that you don't know is going to be the number one reason is to meet other filmmakers.
Absolutely.
And that's ultimately, because the reality is you make a film, whether it's a short or a feature, you wind up burning all your bridges. Your family won't give you any money again. Your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, they've left you. You're sitting in your garage eating ramen noodles for 2 years. You need new friends. Let's face it. By that point in your life, and that's where film festivals come in. It's like
you need to meet other ramen eating
exactly, yeah, and realize that you're not alone. There's a bunch of other people doing the exact same thing, facing the same challenges, creatively and financially as you, and then those are going to be your new friends.
Yep. One thing I wanted to touch on, and I'll leave it at a very simple touch on, and I'll let you elaborate. The hoax, or what people know as the hoax.
Yeah, so in, what was it, about 15 years ago now, as I mentioned, meeting other filmmakers from Slamdance. There was a filmmaker named Eitan Gorlin who had won Slamdance in the year 2000 or something. We had stayed friends, and we started doing a series of short films together in like 2007, 2008, around then. We were sort of pitching these as kind of spec pilots for TV, for episodics, as kind of a side project while we were both trying to get our next features made. Anyway, we eventually came up with a character named Martin Eisenstadt, and Eitan played the character of Marty, but we both wrote and directed the kind of shorts that we did around this guy. And this was basically just as a spec pilot for a TV show. We were pitching this to, he was a Washington-based pundit, but not a very good one. A guy who would show up on MSNBC or Fox News, but always get booted in the green room for breaking news or something like that. And so because of that, he was a senior fellow at the Harding Institute for Freedom and Democracy, named after the second worst president in U.S. history, or at the time, the second worst president in U.S. history, Warren Harding. And lived in the basement of his mother in Washington, and she was a retired gossip columnist there. We had this whole kind of, all these different characters, his interns, different people in his life. And to kind of help develop the character, we created a website for him, a blog for him. We shot these YouTube videos that we would post, and people started to think he was real.
Yeah.
And he also claimed he was an advisor to the McCain campaign, which, by the way, to this day, no one from the McCain campaign has ever gone on record to say that he wasn't. McCain himself died, never denying it.
That's so good.
Which is weird. But anyway, and so we kind of ran with it and this was during the height of the 2008 presidential campaign. And then by the time the campaign ended, there was a real McCain advisor who anonymously leaked to Fox News that Sarah Palin thought that Africa was a country instead of a continent.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was true. She apparently did say that.
I think SNL remembered that too.
Oh, yeah. Well, our character took credit for being the source of that story because we knew that the real person wouldn't come out.
Yeah,
Fox
yeah,
wouldn't.
That's solid.
Anyway, so MSNBC had breaking news. Bum bum bum. Marty Eisenstadt is the source of the Palin Africa story, and they had two dial-up pundits on saying, "Why? He shouldn't have done that. Oh, yes, he should have done that." which is exactly what it was. In our mind, it was never a hoax. It was a satire. We were satirizing.
You're sitting there with your popcorn. And
Yeah.
like, this is
Our
great.
Momito popcorn, just eating it. And so, anyways, so no one in Washington or New York knew who we were. There were plenty of people in Hollywood because we had been pitching this show. You know, we knew who we were. You know, and there were a lot of people online who got that it was a satire. Like about half the people sort of got that. Oh, this is whoever these guys are. They're making fun of this culture of the punditocracy. And anyway, so we outed ourselves to the New York Times as the two filmmakers who, you know, created this character. They ran a big half-page profile on us on the front page of the arts section. And the next day we got a book offer. We're like, book? What's a book? And but this was fall of 2008. The economy had just collapsed.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a feature film made, which was the main thing that we were trying to do. You couldn't get a film made to save your life.
You couldn't get a gallon of gas for under $5.
Exactly.
Either.
Yeah. And so when presented with the option, do you keep not getting paid to not direct a movie, or do you get paid to write a book? Your wife tells you to write a book. And so we did. So we wrote a memoir, and it was a very prestigious publisher, Farrar, Straus, Giroux, which is part of Macmillan, I think. And but you know, they have like a bunch of Pulitzer Prize winners, Nobel Prize winners, and us. And so they wanted us to write a memoir from Marty Eisenstadt, as if he does still exist and he's writing this memoir about his life and about how these two dubious filmmakers are claiming to be him. I mean, it gets very weird and meta and kind of fun.
That's so cool.
Anyway, in the film in the book, got great reviews, better reviews probably than most of our movies. And you know, and then we went actually back to pitching it as a TV series. And we had a couple friends who were producers on Frasier. They were going to be our showrunners. Ashton Kutcher came on board. He was going to produce it through his company. CBS Studios was going to do it. We were all going to pitch it to Showtime, and then lawyers got involved, and everything just collapsed. Or maybe, in retrospect, we think it may have had to do with like all the agents that were involved, because this, if you remember, a few years ago, all the Writers Guild sued all the agents for too much packaging fees, and we think that may have had something to do with it. Anyway, for whatever reason, it all
Got shut down.
Yeah, which is typical for Hollywood. You know, one executive gets fired, and boom, everything goes away. So then we were like, okay, never mind. We'll just go back to making our little indie films, and we did. You know, but it's
had
still
a lot of fun while doing it.
But we had a lot of fun doing it. We wrote a book, you know, and actually got paid more for the book than we ever have for making movies too. But as a creative project, you know, it was a lot of fun to do, and I think very worthwhile.
That's so cool.
Certainly for us. Yeah.
That's so cool. Last words to you. Anything that I didn't hit on, anything you'd love to share with the listeners?
Well, we didn't talk about 18 and a half too much.
Well, we're going to do that in the second half of the podcast.
Oh, right.
This is just the last words about you.
Oh, about me? No, I'm good.
Nothing special.
You know?
I beg to differ. You're very special.
Well, thank you.
I loved getting to know you over this last little bit that we've been able to get connected, and also just to research you a little bit and learn a little bit more about Dan Mirvish. Last but not least, if you could look into the camera and just in this segment, share with people where they can find you, whether it be website, social media, wherever.
Yeah, you can go to my website, danmirvish.com, danmirvish.com, or on the social media, probably Instagram's easiest, which I think is @dmirvish.
I believe so.
I think so, yeah. That's probably the one that seems to be lasting the longest. I'm also on Facebook and Blue Sky, and used to be on Twitter, but you know, who knows whatever the next one's going to be.
I don't think many people use both or either one of those, Twitter or Blue Sky anymore. But I don't know. Who knows what people use anymore? Yeah.
So, but Instagram seems to be sort of lasting a while. I don't use LinkedIn much.
Okay.
Strangely enough.
I feel like you should get on TikTok. I think you have some.
I am
some really cool stories. I think you should.
Yeah.
You could honestly create some characters, and let's get a resurgence of
Marty Eisenstadt.
Yeah,
I know. We do keep talking about every now and again. My partner
really
and I
fun.
definitely talk about bringing Marty back. Yeah,
that'd
in
be
this administration, he would be. He could do a lot of interesting things. But yeah, I am on TikTok. That may be Dan Mirvish or something. I don't use it that much, but I have used it. Yeah.
Well, we'll let the listeners figure out.
Yeah.
where
You
that
tell
is.
me where I should
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
You tell
And a lot of
Dan
them do.
you tell Dan where Dan is. Where in the world is Dan Mirvish?
Yeah.
Or where's Dan? Like,
Yeah.
where's Waldo?
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us a little bit about who you are and your story. But with that, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll jump back into a fun little game of this or that.
Being a small business is difficult, and that's why each episode we've decided to support a different small business with a shout out. And this week we've decided to shout out a company that's based out of San Diego, California called Califino Tequila. And this company is very near and dear to our hearts because they help sponsor our Momi2 launch party. And you can check them out at califino.com and find their wide variety of tequila, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed with the flavors. You can actually find my favorite tequila in a glass encased box. It's the Extra Añejo, and it is by far my favorite tequila. So go check them out at califino.com. And with that, let's get back into the episode.
Mr. Mirvish, you are here to have some fun.
Okay.
Would you like to have even more fun
I would love to have even more fun.
playing a game called This or That?
This or that is the game that I would love to play.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, This or That is brought to you by our friends over at Coastline Travel. So if you're looking to go anywhere in the world, if you're needing to book any hotels, flights, or excursions, go to coastlinetravel.com to take care of your travel needs.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I will ask a series of 20 questions to you. This or that questions. The first one we always ask to every single guest here, and that is tacos or pizza?
Tacos.
Tacos. What's your favorite kind of taco?
Fish.
Okay. I can get down with a good fish taco.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Work in chaos or work in calm?
It starts as calm and turns into chaos really quickly. So
It's working in both.
yeah, I'll say chaos. Yeah.
And you might be a little biased with this question because of the fact that we have some with us, but you don't need to be. Popcorn or Milk Duds?
Popcorn.
If you're watching a movie,
Yeah.
obviously. Some people got a sweet
No,
tooth, you know? I
I
don't.
can respect.
I think theaters should actually have a little bit more an option of like kettle corn. I think people would.
Some
love
do.
that. Do they?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Might be a little stickier on the floor, but
yeah,
you know,
but it's
floors are
worth
sticky
it.
anyways.
Yeah. No, the theater in Culver City where we used to go with our kids that had kettle corn. That was a big draw.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say so. I love kettle corn.
Mhm.
I'm a sucker for some good kettle corn. We just went to the flower fields down in Carlsbad recently,
Mm-hmm.
and they have kettle corn. Like a small bag was $11. My son really wanted one. We got it for him.
Yeah.
It was the worst $11 bag of kettle corn. So
Oh.
if you're looking for good kettle corn, don't go to the flower
Don't
fields in
go
Carlsbad.
there. All right.
Next question, though. Do you like to plan it all, or do you prefer to wing it?
I wing it.
Yeah. Is that with everything and you just
In life,
yeah,
pretty much.
wing
Yeah.
it? It's way more fun.
Yeah.
Podcasts or playlists?
Podcast.
What's your favorite podcast?
This one,
Other than this one, of course.
only this one, literally only this one.
Perfect.
There you go.
If
That was the right answer.
it's the right answer. It's the
Yeah.
best answer. It's the only answer.
Mm-hmm.
1940s drama or 1980s comedy?
40s drama.
What are you into? What is it? What kind of?
I don't
rings a
know.
bell
I
for you?
watched a lot on TCM when I'm not
Yeah.
watching Momi2. Did I say that the right way?
Momi 2.
Yeah.
However you want to say it, as long as you're
But
watching.
no, but I think the 80s comedies, because I grew up on them, like I've seen them.
Yep.
The 40s dramas, a lot of them I still haven't seen. So they're kind of new to me
Yeah.
in a lot of times.
Well, if you're looking for some good classic films, we have a massive catalog of classic titles.
Fantastic.
And we actually, to give him a quick shout out, Harry Marks from at Lobby Intros or
Mhm.
at Let's All Go to the Lobby, depending on what platform you're on. But he is our classic intro, like TCM, Robert Osborne-esque type
Great.
for Momi2.
Oh, fantastic.
So he actually does a weekly, if you go to our YouTube channel or if you go
Mhm.
to our actual Momi2 app or if you just visit his TikTok page, you'll get to see some stuff. He's done intros. They're usually like 2 to 3 minutes long of Sabrina and House on Haunted Hill and,
Great.
and some really cool ones. He did This Is
Fantastic.
Miniver. Which
yeah,
we just,
I think a whole generation is rediscovering several generations worth of films,
Yep.
which is really exciting to see. And I see it through my own kids. Like they're all of a sudden are starting to watch old movies in,
Yeah.
in a way that I couldn't get them to do that.
Yep.
A few years
Crazy,
ago.
right?
Yeah.
When you do watch a movie, do you prefer, or especially at the theater, do you prefer to sit in the front or sit in the back?
Usually about 4 rows from the front.
Four
Not the
rows?
absolute front, but like, yeah, technically you should sit about, films are more or less calibrated for 50 feet from the screen.
Okay.
That's where they're in sync.
Yeah.
So depending on the theater,
Yeah.
it can be slightly different. But, so yeah, I think I like to sit closer to the front because, and this is hard to show on the, if you're just listening to it, but you want a wider field of vision.
Mm-hmm.
And you only get that from being up close. If you're
Yeah.
watching it from the back with a narrow field of vision, you may as well be watching TV or on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally the same thing. So if you want that IMAX experience on a regular screen, sit up close.
There you go.
That's it.
I love that. That's a good little trick.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
little fun fact about theaters. Happy hour or brunch?
Brunch.
Nice little food in there.
Yeah.
A waffle.
Oh, yeah.
Why
Gotta,
not?
gotta
Little
love a
eggs.
waffle. Yeah.
Little Benny. Little eggs
Yeah.
Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak into your own movie. This is a fun one. Would you rather sneak into your own movie or stand in line for it?
Stand in line for it. Yeah.
Talk to the crowd. And
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Engage
sign
with the
some,
audience.
Sign some books.
Absolutely.
Because every person in that line is
Yeah.
going to have your book too. So
Exactly.
why not give some free signatures?
Yeah. No, whatever merch we have for that film, I'll be out there selling it.
Well, you have to step away from the theater for a little bit in this little exercise, but would you rather direct a soap opera or a reality show?
Soap opera.
Yeah. Did you ever get into those or?
I directed some promos for the Soap Opera Network once.
Okay.
I think that was as close as I came to the
Yeah,
soap
yeah,
opera
yeah.
world. But no, I think it would be fun directing soaps because they go so fast.
Yeah.
And which is really, I mean, that's like indie filmmaking,
Yeah.
You've just got to make these decisions, boom, 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 and then
Yeah.
you're done. And, I don't know how actors memorize that dialogue every day like that.
It's very impressive.
Yeah, it really is. Like once you get over the fact that, it's a soap opera, you're like, okay, let's look at the craft of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone's working hard on these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As an independent filmmaker, this will be a fun question. 1 location shoot or 30 locations in 10 days?
One location shoot.
That's a little hectic.
Yeah.
Could be a lot of fun though.
Yeah.
But that's how you can keep your budget down too.
Yep.
So
That's most of my films tend to be 1 or 2 locations.
Get creative.
Yep.
Organized or messy?
Messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, you said you like the chaos, so
Yeah.
it totally makes
Yep.
sense. Hitchcock or Kubrick?
Hitchcock.
Yeah.
But I like Kubrick too.
Yeah.
I'm not.
What's your favorite work from Hitchcock?
Probably Rope or Rear Window.
Okay.
I think Rear Window overall.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
Cool. Love it.
But
There's no wrong
But
answer.
I've been watching some really old Hitchcock stuff that where it's kind of interesting to see him start to get his footing,
Yeah.
and turn into the Hitchcock that we know. That's kind of neat to see.
Yeah. It's a fun question. Rotten Tomatoes or audience reaction?
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Is audience, when you say audience reaction,
Audience
is that-
reaction would be like a live audience
Oh.
giving you a reaction, or would you do?
Oh,
like-
a live audience giving reaction.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes the tomatoes can be squashed for no reason,
Yeah. No,
or plump for no reason.
yeah, there's a lot to learn about Rotten Tomatoes and what it does to and what it doesn't do. And I've talked to some of the people who work there, and I actually have a lot more respect for them now, having talked to them.
Yeah.
Because I used to besmirch them a lot. Now, but once they gave my film 18.5 certified fresh
Yeah.
and 80%, I have a lot more respect for them now. It's funny how that'll do it.
Once you get a good review, it's like, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I like
no,
what they
exactly.
do. I like what they do.
Um,
But I think this is why Letterboxd is such a big hit, because
Yeah.
You get true audience reaction from that.
You really do, yeah. And Rotten Tomatoes tried to do it, or is trying to do that, and never really took off. But Letterboxd, which started overseas, it started in New Zealand or South America, I don't know where.
I can't remember.
It finally, in the last couple of years, it's really taken off in the States. But on the other hand, one thing Rotten Tomatoes does do, which I respect a bit more, is you really have to be a professional working film critic to even qualify to be on there.
Yeah.
And then they got a lot of heat a few years ago because it was a bunch of old white men, and so they diversified. But it's still, but the problem with it is it's still very U.S. centric, and so like our film 18½, we had played it, at the film festival at the Sao Paulo International Film Festival. We had like 25 great reviews from Brazil. Not a single one counted on Rotten Tomatoes. On the other hand, all those critics also post on Letterboxd. So Letterboxd is much more international, and which is really interesting. Anyway, so they both have their ups and downs.
Yep.
But any filmmaker has to pay attention to both. Like, you can't take them for granted either.
Absolutely. Festival buzz or viral trailer?
I would say festival buzz. That's certainly the thing that has helped me more.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think trailers are way too long anyways now. So.
Oh yeah.
Pitch deck or elevator pitch?
Elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I teach how to make pitch decks in my classes, and the students still can't do them well. But it's also a weird thing with pitch decks now. Like, people have gotten obsessed with them in the film world, especially, but also like in other businesses too. And there's whole cottage industries of pitch deck designers, and I'm like, no, if you can't pitch your own freaking film yourself, and put together an 8-page PDF, and you have to hire someone else for it, why would I trust you to make a 80-minute film or 90-minute film?
100%.
So, and if you can't pitch it in an elevator, and I talk about that in my classes too, like, what's your 15-second pitch? I have sold distribution rights to my films over a urinal at Sundance before. Like, if you can't pitch your film in the time it takes to pee, you don't belong in this business.
I like that. That's a great example.
Yeah.
I think with extroverts and introverts, you can learn how to do a pitch deck.
Right.
Or you can hire someone to build a pitch deck.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to learn how to actually pitch.
Yeah.
Because whether you're
100%.
introverted or extroverted, like, you still need to learn, especially introverted people. They need to learn how to talk.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm always shocked at Chapman, which is the number 4 film school in America. How many of the other classes they're just teaching them how to do decks, and I'm the only one, I think, who's saying, no, shoot a video of you, a pitch video, which forces you to pitch live, or on camera at least, And I think that's a much more compelling way to pitch a project if you can do it right.
Absolutely. Write a book about filmmaking, or make a film about writing books.
Well, I've done the first one, so I'll do the second one next, I guess. Yeah.
Perfect. Accidental cult classic or surprise Oscar nod?
Well, both. I mean, you can be both.
You could be both, but you got to pick one.
I'll take cult classic.
I love cult classics.
Yeah. I wouldn't say no to accidental Oscar. Remind me to tell you how to win an Oscar, by the way. I got a crazy story for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make a film with your best friend or your worst critic.
Best friend.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, making a film is about...
It's collaboration.
It's collaboration.
Yeah.
It's friendship. You want to be with people that you enjoy, not people who disrespect you or don't respect you.
Would you rather make one $20 million film or $21 million films?
$21 million films.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question.
Cannes or Comic-Con?
I think Cannes, but it's a tough call. I've been to both, and they both have their pluses and they both have their minuses too.
Yeah.
They're both kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, Comic-Con is a little bit more accessible, certainly for us, because we live in Southern California. So it's like, go, don't go, get caught in traffic. Yeah, go see the aircraft carrier instead. We did that. My son and I did that once. We were like, forget about Comic-Con. We just couldn't get the traffic. So we had other things we could do, Whereas Cannes, it's a commitment. You got if you're going, you got to go, and and the pressure's on because you've spent a lot of money to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And last but not least, Sundance or Slamdance?
Slamdance, yay.
Of course. Slam it down. All right. Well, this has been a fun little game of this or that.
This is cool. Yeah.
Thanks for playing.
Now I see the chaos.
You see the chaos. It's a lot of fun.
There you go.
I wish we had a fourth camera that could just zoom in on the cards.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a game of how many cards are going to turn over or not, and that'd be kind of fun too. We had one episode we threw a card into the trash can.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, but whether you're going to Comic-Con or Cannes or Slamdance or Sundance, if you need any travel for that, go to coastlinetravel.com for all of your travel needs. And with that, we will be right back.
Promoting your podcast is hard, and that's why each episode we want to take a moment to promote a different podcast that either we enjoy or a guest enjoys. And this week, since we're talking so much about independent filmmaking with Dan Mirvish, we wanted to shout out a podcast that fits the theme. So we wanted to shout out a podcast called the Filmmaking Stuff Podcast. And this is where actor, writer, and producer Tom Malloy has quick little episodes that have a bunch of nuggets of information on how to fund, produce, and even sell your independent film. So if you want a quick little episode of inspiration, go check out the Filmmaking Stuff Podcast. And with that, let's get back into the pod.
All right. Well, we're back here with Dan Mirvish, and we are going to take a second to touch on one of the questions, which was how to win an Oscar nod.
Yeah, because who wouldn't want to win an Oscar? So one way to do it is starts with this story. So in 2004, I made one of my films was called Open House. It was a real estate musical, starred Oscar nominee Sally Kellerman, Anthony Rapp, who had just done Rent at the time, Ann Magnuson. Really great cast, but we did it for no money on cameras smaller than these, but it was an original real estate musical, as one does, why not? So
it's everyone's dream.
Yeah. Anyway, so we finished the film, played it at a bunch of good festivals. Audiences liked it. Festivals liked it. Critics liked it. Distributors wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. So like most good Hollywood stories, this one starts with me coming out of the proctologist's office one day, and I'm walking a little funny, and I get this call from my friend Ariana Bacco, who at the time was the head of acquisitions at Miramax Films. And I said, Ariana, wow, you're calling me on such an inauspicious day when I'm walking funny, but you want to pick up the film for Miramax Films,
Yeah.
And she goes, no, that piece of crap, no, we don't want it. I said, well, why are you calling me? Why are you bothering me? She said, well, Dan, have you ever heard about this Oscar category called Best Original Musical? And I said, Best Original Musical? That's crazy talk. I've never heard of such a thing. She goes, no, it's a real category that the Academy has. They've just never activated it. I said, what do you mean activated? Well, she said, the rules are very strict and arcane. If there are 5 original films in any one year, then they activate the category. 3 of them get nominated and 1 of them wins. But how they define an original musical is very strict. It has to have at least 5 songs by the same songwriting team. Can't be based on a stage play. So, Moulin Rouge wouldn't have counted, not original songs. Chicago wouldn't have counted. It's a Broadway play.
Yep.
So that's why there had never been a year where there had been 5 eligible films. The reason she was calling me is Miramax thought they had 2 films that were going to be eligible that year, and they needed a couple patsies like me that could just fill out the category but not really win,
Yeah.
And I was like, sure, I'll be Harvey's patsy. What could possibly go wrong with that idea? And she said, great. So we started looking for other filmmakers together. We started to look for other musicals that would fit the category. Now, Neil Young, the rock star, he was actually going to produce an earlier film of mine, so I kind of knew him and his producing partner. He had just directed a film called Greendale. It was sort of based on an album that was coming out, but they shot the film before the album was released. That made the film eligible. So he submitted. Remember Trey Parker and Matt Stone, those guys?
Yep.
They had just done Team America World Police for Paramount. And that had 6 songs. I knew those guys through Slamdance. We got them to submit. Disney had the last of their hand-drawn animated films called Home on the Range, but the music was by Alan Menken, 8-time Oscar winner Alan Menken for, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, all that. Alan's like, well, I've got room on my, mantle for one more Oscar. Sure, I'll submit. So we got Disney and Alan Menken to submit. Meanwhile, turns out the 2 films that Miramax had were not eligible for these various arcane reasons, so they dropped out. So we had 4 films, including my film, Open House. We needed one more film. Now, this is in August of 2004. The deadline for the Academy is December 1st at 5 p.m. So we thought, great, I'll just shoot another film and just make it a musical.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be good. It just have to be a musical.
Has to qualify.
Yeah, it just has to qualify. So I was getting ready to go to a film festival in Oldenburg, Germany, in northern Germany, a couple weeks later with one of my acting partners from Open House, my producing partner, and I'm friends with the people who run the festival. And we knew a lot of German actors and rock stars go there. So we thought, why don't we just shoot it while we're there? So I borrowed a friend's camera, borrowed a microphone and a light, a little mag light, just taped everything together. And we came up with an improvisable storyline, but we wrote a dozen songs like in 2 weeks. There was a team of 4 of us. We had crazy adventures in Germany. The biggest pimp in Germany was part of the production and filming him beating up people. And the biggest triathlon in Europe was going on there. Anyway, crazy story. Come back to LA, slap together a cut of the film. And at 4:55 p.m., we go to the Academy on Wilshire over here in Beverly Hills, and the elevator's broken, and their office is on the 7th floor, and we're running up the stairs and running upstairs and running up the stairs.
Oh, wow.
And we finally get there at 4:59. We slap down the DVD or VHS or whatever it was at the time. We said, here you go. Here's your last film. Here's a 5th film. And they go, you idiots. What kind of idiot goes to Germany to make a bad German musical? Because we couldn't make it a good film because then it would take votes away from our first film.
Yeah.
So we had 9 days to make a bad German musical. It was like a real life version of The Producers. Anyway, so I'm like, well, I'm the idiot that would go and do something like that. So I'm like, crap. Now we got to take it to the Board of Governors. And so, 3 days later, the Board of Governors meets, and it's Tom Hanks and the studio heads, and they all talk like this, right? Because that's how they talk at the Academy. You know that. And they're like, Oscar for Best Original Musical. That's crazy talk. We'd never heard of such a thing. And the guys in the music branch, the governors, they're like, whoops, yeah, we just didn't think anyone would ever do it. But, it's there. It's in our rule book. And they're like, well, who are we going to give this thing to? Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who showed up in dresses, hopped up on acid the last time they were nominated? No, they're banned for life. Neil Young, for whatever reason, they didn't like Neil because he didn't show up for rehearsals the last time he'd been nominated for songs, so they didn't like Neil. Alan Menken, no, Alan, you've got too many Oscars. You don't get any more. You're cut off at 8. And then this Mirvish fella, my combined budget didn't add up to the cost of an Oscar gift basket. So, and you just told us one of your films was bad, So, no, we're not going to give you one. So they canceled the category for that year. And we're like, what? You're such sticklers for the rules. All we did was follow your rules. And they're like, well, with the Academy, what are you going to do about a kid? Because they still talk like that, right?
Yeah, they talk like they're the Dick Tracy movie.
Exactly, yeah. So, so he said, well, we'll get press. And I do that a lot, So we got in Variety, Hollywood Reporter, LA Times, Reuters picked up the story, ran all over the world. There's like articles in Poland about this thing.
Crazy.
And based on the press that we got, we actually got distribution from a small company that then got bought out by the Weinstein Company, which Miramax had just turned into the Weinstein Company. They put out the DVD, and on the back of the box it says, Open House, the film that changed the rules of the Academy Awards. And, and really the whole point of this endeavor was not to win an Oscar, it was to get distribution. Because that was the theory, was that, if you get an Oscar nomination, some distributor
Someone's
will pick you
gonna
up.
pick it up.
Yeah, because we were getting nowhere with distribution. And so in that sense, we actually succeeded. And then meanwhile, the German film, the actor friend, he recut it. It turned out pretty decent. It played festivals. It got a distribution deal. Anyway, for the audience, though, the relevant thing is that then the next year, they literally rewrote the rules and they include what I call the Mirvish clause that says, well, we have the right to activate the category if we so choose to activate the category. Anyway, but the rule is still there. It's never been activated. So all you out there in podcast land, all you have to do is make a 41-minute feature, because the Academy defines a feature as make 5 musicals and or just make one and then get a bunch of Bollywood films to submit and win an Oscar. It's just that simple.
That's it.
Yeah,
Easy peasy.
easy peasy. Yeah,
I love it. Or you can just pay $15 million and win Best Picture.
Well, that'll do it too.
That'll do it too.
Yeah, but if you don't have the money,
Thanks for sharing with us.
sure.
That's so cool. I don't even know how to transition out of that. That is just an awesome story. But let's talk about a film that you did make
Yeah,
that's on Momi too.
right.
Because I asked you, I said, hey, go to Momi 2, pick a film, and it's like, well, I'll pick my film. No problem. We both watched it. You've already seen it.
Yeah.
I actually had already seen it. Snippets of it, because this is the tough thing. I don't get to watch films through the entirety of the film very often. I'll put a film on in my office, and I'll try to watch it as I'm working, and then I get calls, and it's just like, and I always forget to pause it.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Of course.
So we got to watch 18 and a half.
Yeah,
Your film
that's my film.
that's playing on Momi 2. How cool
your
is that?
your network.
How
right
cool is
there.
that?
That's very cool. It's rare that I get to meet someone that has actually programmed my film and put it on their
It's there.
their thing.
Front and
So
center.
thank you for doing
Tell
that.
us a little bit about your film, or tell the audience, not us, because I'm here.
Yeah.
Tell the audience that's listening about the film, and what was your inspiration to make it?
So it's the short version is it's a Watergate thriller / comedy. It's not a documentary. It's fiction, historical fiction or speculative historical fiction. And the previous film the prior film I had made right before it was called Bernard and Huey. That film was written by Jules Pfeiffer, who just passed away this year. But he was an Oscar, Pulitzer, Obie-winning, Tony-nominated writer, mainly known as a cartoonist. That's what he won the Pulitzer for. He was a cartoonist for The Village Voice for 40 years. And I went to see him, my friend Terry and I actually went to see him mainly to show him dailies from this other film that we were working on, because he had written the script for it. I was directing it. That has Jim Rash and David Koechner in it. But it happened to be the day after Trump got elected in 2016.
Okay.
And so inevitably the conversation turned to Nixon and Watergate. We're talking about how many possible impeachments could we likely have, things like that.
Got it.
Anyway, so we were talking because that was kind of why Pfeiffer won the Pulitzer. It was for political cartooning during Watergate. Anyway, and then and he was living kind of near the Hamptons on the tip of Long Island. And then I mentioned my friend Terry was with me. Terry had been an indie filmmaker in LA, but had inherited his grandparents' motel, the Seaside Motel in Greenport, Long Island, which is kind of on the north tip of Long Island. And we took the ferry there. And Terry was very smart. He had kept the kind of vintage look and feel of this motel, because he knew he would get a lot of photo shoots, a lot of, like for Vogue and Harper's and things like that out there, and some music videos had shot there, but he'd never let anyone shoot a feature there. And so we're walking around, we both had kind of Watergate on the mind. And I'm like, Terry, this looks like 1973, And I said, why don't we shoot a Watergate movie here? And he's like, okay, that sounds great. And then, I started working with a writer friend of mine, Daniel Moya, who eventually became our third producing partner. And we came up with this original story that would take place during Watergate, but we changed the location of this motel. It's not in New York now. In the movie, it's in Maryland. Yep. It's closer to DC, but it's not, because this thing doesn't look like the Watergate. It looks like a little seaside motel. Yeah. But this is, an old axiom of indie film is if you have a great location, make a movie. And then it turned out Daniel, his aunt and uncle owned a diner just down the street from Terry's motel. And we're like, that's two locations. Now the film gods say you have to make the movie, So we wrote a script around that, and it's basically Willa Fitzgerald, who a lot of people may know from Pulse now on Netflix, one of the top shows there. She's been in she was in Strange Darlings last fall. She plays a Nixon transcriber who gets a hold of the missing 18.5-minute gap in the Nixon Watergate tapes and wants to leak it to a reporter. And she meets up at this hotel ultimately with John Magaro, who was just in September 5th, Oscar-nominated film, and he's been in a ton of things. He is a reporter. And so she's going to leak it to him, but they run afoul of hippie swingers and nefarious forces out to get them.
I love it. And let's go
including Richard Kind. Yeah.
Yeah, no, let's go down the list of of actors that are in this film? Because I mean, there's a whole list of people.
There is
and I'm
a
not
list
sure.
of actors.
Are these all people from like that you've met through Slamdance, or is this like over the years? Or?
No, it's a range. It's an interesting.
I was just curious
range.
about that. If that was something that
so
kind of-
Richard Kind is someone who had been in my last film
Yep.
in Bernard and Huey, and I had actually met him like at the premiere at a festival screening of the prior film.
Okay.
So that was how I got Richard Kind.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Lloyd Kaufman, who I've known for 30 years, kind of through Slamdance, and you have a connection to him, or your dad made movies for him, or something like that. Right?
my dad actually directed some of the Troma films.
Wow.
So like Class of Nukem High Part 2 and the Part 3.
Amazing.
Fortress of America, which actually is another fun publicity story that only he could tell the best way. But in essence, what they did is they took out a whole page in a local newspaper about this Fortress of America movie, that it was going to be this big thing, and they actually had like a screening for it, and so many journalists like came in to cover it, and then they figured out it was just this like little indie film, so really funny.
Yeah.
But then there's there's some other ones that he did, but I've
so
known Lloyd since I was a kid.
Oh
and,
my gosh.
I haven't seen him in a long time, and I'd
Yeah.
love to. One of my dreams, because it's just I can't get them yet, but I'm hoping to get some of the Troma films that my dad made, and also from
great. Yeah.
really weird connection is actually my wife's best friend from high school, who's still actually, they live like two streets away from us still today. They her grandfather is another director of Troma movies. His name is Will Zenz.
Yeah.
And so
That name rings a bell.
he Craig can look it up real quick. It's something about a trucker barefoot. I can't remember the name of the film, but he'll look it up real quick for us. Will Zenz, Zens, and he has some films. So I was actually at a baby shower for one of their two kids, and I was talking to her dad, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my dad was a filmmaker, and that's so cool what you're doing with Moby too." And no, it's another one. Trucker Woman, but there's Barefoot County or something in Barefoot County or something like that. Either way,
But a very Troma baby shower sounds.
Hot Summer in Barefoot County. Yeah, there's a Trucker Woman. There's the other one. So
Yeah.
two titles, just put them together.
Well, there you go.
Trucker
Yeah.
Woman in Barefoot County. There you go.
That's a Troma film. Yeah.
But so we found out that he's like, "Oh yeah, my dad." Oh, I was like, "Well, what has he made?" And just asking him, small talk, and he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't know these films." And I was like, "Try me." And he's like, "Oh, I made it for these Troma films," and I was like, "No way! Like, what a small world."
Yeah.
And so I think Will went to USC, my dad went to UCLA. And
Right.
crazy. So either way, you got John Cryer.
Yeah. And John's someone I've known for a long time. He saw my very first film, Omaha the Movie, at Raleigh Studios, also right around the corner. That's when I first met him. And so, but I tried to cast him in other things over the years and just never worked out or wasn't the right casting. But this time it was like, "Hey, John, you want to play the voice of Haldeman,
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Easy."
So cool. Ted Raimi.
Ted Raimi, that came through Bruce Campbell.
Okay.
I had been in touch with Bruce on the prior film, but he couldn't do that. But I, got to know his agent through that. And then this time around, we tried to get him originally for a different part, but he had just had like eye surgery, cataract surgery, or I don't know, something. And so again, we got him to do voiceover, but as the voice of Nixon, which, as it turned out, he was a huge Nixon Watergate aficionado. Like when he was 14, he religiously watched the hearings. And so he's the one who then called up Ted. He's like, "Hey, Ted, you want to play
awesome.
Al Haig in it?" And then so that's how we got Ted Raimi. So
Small world. Sullivan Jones.
Sully was just cast he had just been on Broadway in Stage Play, which was a big hit like 5 years ago, right before the pandemic. And so our casting director found him, but he was great, and he's now since been in a whole bunch of things on TV.
Yeah, Vondi.
Vondi Curtis Hall,
Yeah.
Emmy winner, Vondi Curtis Hall, director himself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him, but his agent or like the head of talent at the Gersh agency, I've known him since he was an assistant, and also through Slamdance connection. So it's but Vondi kind of knew about me through Slamdance because he's always been very involved with the Spirit Awards and independent film projects here in LA. So, so even when Slamdance isn't directly the connection,
Still kind of loosely.
Yeah, and like John, I kind of found because Kelly Reichardt, who I sort of know, she recommended him, and she's an amazing director. They've got a film at Cannes going right now, So, and Willa had been recommended by Lucky McKee, who had made film, was at USC with Ryan Johnson, So that connection goes back 30 years. He said, "Oh yeah, Will is great to work with." So part of it is the nice thing about Slamdance and that community is the recommendations of other actors. And that has really paid off. And it was great. And so for Bruce and Ted and John, the original plan was to just film them, was to bring them into a studio like this in LA at some point in post production, and do all the voice work, because we were recreating at some, it's not much of a spoiler to say that at some point you hear the 18.5-minute tape. The characters listen to it. So it's a fair bit of voice work. It's not nothing. But then the real challenge we had with 18.5 is we started shooting on March 3rd, 2020. What could possibly go wrong in March of 2020?
I don't think there was anything
what
happening
happened
around
in
then.
March of 2020. So we got 11 days in. We found out from the DGA that we were the last film shooting in North America. And they were like, "Oh, this is great. You guys are isolated. You're in a bubble." And we're like, "What's a bubble?" And what does everyone else around the world know that we don't know? Because we really were kind of isolated. So we shut down production. We took what wound up being a 6-month healthy hiatus or pandemic pause, because we had 4 days left to shoot. So I grabbed the hard drive, came back to LA, started cutting the film myself. And then a few months into the pandemic, where everything had shut down by this point, and actors couldn't act, filmmakers couldn't make films, and nothing was happening. We said, you know what? We have this voice stuff. Now everyone's got Zoom. A couple of the actors had decent mics. Let's just do the whole thing over Zoom. And so that's what we did, because Ted was stuck in Canada, Bruce was in Oregon, John was in LA, I was in LA, my writing partner was in New York. So we did the whole thing, the whole 18.5-minute gap on Zoom, and knocked it out in a couple of hours.
That is wild.
So the pandemic was, it probably made it cheaper and easier and more creative for us to be able to do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to think that the historical, like balancing the historical side of the film, but also making sure you had the creative freedom to do what you want to do would be your biggest challenge. But I guess the pandemic turned out to be
a pretty big challenge. Yeah. And in the end, a third of our crew stayed on that location at the hotel. Terry let them stay at the motel for about 10 weeks. In fact, our cinematographer never left. I think she's still there, So that was really the single biggest challenge,
for sure.
was making sure nobody died and everyone, came back safely and is still around. So
what was like another challenge that you had as far as filming a period piece?
So
especially on an indie budget,
right? And that's the thing that a lot of people are always like, period. It's hard to shoot on an indie budget. But if you have the location, like the basic, I mean, we had a great production designer, Monica Dabrowski, but most of the production design was baked into the location, into this motel, because Terry was very intentional about, not putting up satellite dishes and things like that. So that was really, and then we had a great costume designer, Sarah, and so it's not
phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you, and a great cinematographer, Elle Schneider. And so we, what I also said to everyone on the cast and crew, as kind of a mandate, was I said, we're not going to use any filmmaking techniques that were developed post 1974. So in other words, the way we move the camera, the kinds of lenses that we had, the kinds of audio, we have all original soundtrack, and we used like old mics, for that.
I was really curious about how you got that 70s look to it. Because it's not just like, you can film a period piece, and you can get clothing and you can get a location, but like to give it that authentic raw look too, very difficult. Yeah, and it was Elle and I and everyone on the team looking at old films and knowing filmmakers from that era. I knew Robert Altman, and he told me how and why he did sound and zoom lenses and things like that. So I kind of knew a lot about that, and
Yeah, you know, taking all that into account and not, you know, there's no drones, there's no, you know, there's no gimbals, there's not Steadicam because that was 1976, which Lloyd Kaufman was an associate producer on Rocky, the first film that did use it, strangely enough. So yeah, it was just sort of an attention to detail all around, you know, with everyone. You know, I mean, the actors were listening to 70s music in their headphones before takes, which was great, you know, just to kind of get them into the mood. My composer, Luis Guerra, he and I wrote all original bossa nova soundtrack, and we had a great Brazilian singer, Caro Pieroto, who lives here in LA, who could sing in English and Portuguese. And we were really kind of diving back into how they did bossa nova in the 60s and 70s and making that work. So it's all those elements together, I think, is what pulls you into this weird 70s world that we create, you know.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I really enjoyed the film. I hope others will. If you could maybe look at the camera, kind of last little pitch about the film, but also who do you feel will enjoy it?
Everyone around the world will enjoy this film, 18 and a half. It's no, I think if you, certainly if you like history, if you like political stuff, but also if you like thrillers, if you like comedies, if you like weird, cringy sex scenes, there's some of that in there. You know, there's something for everyone. There's dancing. It's not singing, but there is dancing. And if you just want to see like an indie film that is different, because this film, it's not one genre. Like, I'll warn you, you know, you think it's a thriller, then or is it a comedy, or is it a thriller again? So you have to be on board with that. Like, it will defy your expectations one way or whatever your expectations are going in. Honestly, I don't know what people's expectations are going in, but and honestly, that's the freedom that you have in making an indie film. You know, there's a scene in there that's a 20-minute dinner scene, 25-minute dinner scene with 4 people. And as we were writing it, you know, my writing partner, Daniel, and I, we were just like, you know what, this is, you know, any Hollywood studio executive would say, no, cut this out. You know, or cut this down. This is no one's going to want to sit through basically a 25-minute play in the middle of the movie. And we're like, but that's what you can do in an indie film. Like, if it feels right to us and authentic to the story and the characters that we're telling, then why not? You know, as long as we can shoot it interestingly enough, and I think we tried to do that and mix things up a bit, that's what counts, you know. But don't, I mean, this really is a great example of just, you know, how do you make an indie film on spit, grit, and, you know, 2x4s.
Absolutely. Well, I really enjoyed it. I definitely think everyone that's listening to this podcast should check it out because it was a fun watch.
Thank you.
It wasn't something that made me like some indie films would be like, there's some dead parts in it, right? Or just some stuff where you just could have cut out or too much character development or whatever. This was just a really well-made indie film, and I'm so glad that we have it on Momi 2. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely go check it out on Momi 2. But Dan, thank you again for coming on the podcast, not just to talk about your film, but also to talk about your book, talk about the hoax, and just to get know a little bit more about you.
Thanks. And if you like 18 and a half on Momi 2, watch it there first, sure. But then get the DVD because that has the almost 2-hour-long behind-the-scenes making-of documentary, which I also directed, which is, of course, a half hour longer than the film itself, naturally. And and the only place you can see it is on the DVD. So
awesome. Yeah. Little shameless plug for the DVD.
Well, I got to.
Hey, there's some collectors out there now. Like it is a thing.
Yeah,
it is a whole thing, especially like TikTok. There are people that, like my buddy, been able to build a relationship with him, but Blu-ray Dan is how he's known.
Right. Yes.
Dude, he's got a massive collection of Blu-rays and DVDs, and it's incredible to see that. But especially with, you know, Best Buy and all those, like, kind of no longer selling hard copies anymore. So.
Exactly. Yeah, libraries are actually 18 and a half is very big in libraries. We've gotten out to 800 libraries in 47 states and 5 provinces, which is a weird statistic to know.
And one Momi too.
And exactly.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks you again, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the impact that you have on the film students in our college film.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the festival. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, with that, we will call it a day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending your time with us today on the More For Me and You podcast. If you've made it to the end, we appreciate you. Now, go do us a quick favor. Please like, comment, and share this episode. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode with the incredible guests we have coming up. You can also follow us at Momi2Podcast on Instagram and on TikTok. Oh, and for your next movie night, check out the Momi2 app. It's free and packed with amazing movies and shows you've probably never seen. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the pod.